Mark Walsh here from Embodied Yoga Principles. So today we look at how your particular style of yoga will be getting off the mat and into your life. So lots of styles available today. Super cool, isn't it? I really like it. There's so much good and different types of yoga available. Each style of yoga is building us in a particular way, building our embodiment, our way of being in a particular way. Now, if we're doing that consciously, I believe that happens much quicker. However, something is still happening. Sometimes people pick a style because it kind of matches their neurosis, would be the mean way of saying it. It fits a style because it's kind of easy for them, because it's comfortable with their current embodiment. Other times there's a kind of compensatory mechanism. So I met someone just yesterday who's a very kind of yin person who was, didn't feel very powerful in her way of being, but she was doing Ashtanga on a regular basis. So it's important to differentiate, are you doing something which compensates for your style, or one which, your style of being, something which compensates for your way of being, your embodiment, or one which kind of matches it and maybe deepening it. The compensatory one can be really helpful if you're actually learning that way of being, you're building a way of being. However, it can be a bit dangerous if you just say, well, that's what I do over there, and you're not really learning to embody it, you're just putting it off and saying, well, that's where I have fun, or that's where I do strength, or that's where I do softness, and you've kind of outsourced it to 2 hours a week or whatever, yeah? So that's the danger of that. So let's look at the different styles and what they might be embodying if we're intentional about that, if we're not doing this kind of cutting it off into a kind of corner thing. So what have we got? Let's start with the classics. Iyengar. So I think what this is good for is building a sense of control, a sense of detail, a sense of exactness, and also kind of obedience, discipline, both to ourselves and to somebody else in terms of the teacher. So that's what that's good for. For me, it's been very helpful. I did similar practices in martial arts that build similar qualities as well. Japanese martial arts are very Iyengar-like. Not so good for being a bit controlling, a bit too exact, a bit neurotic, controlling of self and other. I've definitely seen that from Iyengar people. Now, I'm not saying everyone who does Iyengar ends up that way. Calm down, yeah? I'm not saying you necessarily, of course there's lots of different ways to do it, because how you do it and the exact teacher, that really matters, but I'm talking very broad brushstrokes, yeah? Next, let's look at Ashtanga. So there's still a lot of form in that, so everything I just said about form applies, but there's a fieriness to it. I'd say there's a sort of repetitive quality as well, and this idea of doing it every single morning could be great on the discipline front, could get a bit neurotic. I've definitely got some friends that are utterly addicted to their practice and not in a good way. The fieriness could be helpful. If we go to kind of the hot yoga or the rocket yoga or the, I don't know, whatever the most latest extreme rocket, death, torture yoga, banned by Amnesty International, then obviously we're looking at the more fiery practices. That can be really helpful for developing that sense of fire and fierceness and energy. I had a friend who was a little bit depressed, not hardcore clinically, but a bit down. And I said, go back to hot yoga. It's going to be really good for you. And, it's not necessarily practice I need as a person, as someone who's quite like that anyway, but for her, in that situation, was incredibly helpful. That sense of, we could look at individual postures, like does your style have more where you're standing up tall, more back bending, more the yang side, or more the forward bending, the more yin side? You might look at that. Does your teacher tend to stress the back or the forward bending, for example? What else have we got? Acra Yoga, where we've got two different sides of that, the basing, the solidness, the responsibility, the flyers, the expressiveness, the creativity. You can build a lot in that. What else? Scaravelli is very big where I come from. This is a kind of soft feeling, more watery kind of yoga. So that's going to build those capacities off the mat as well, particularly if we're intentional. It might not build the qualities of like discipline and boundaries and those sort of things you might get from the Ashtanga or the Iyengar. Vinyasa, it's called flow, but I don't generally find Vinyasa classes that flowing. I tend to find them more on the sort of earth and fire front, kind of like the Ashtanga, if we're going to use that model, maybe with a bit more flow. True creative yoga is very rare, but if you go to kind of free form classes where people are kind of creatively doing their own thing, that would be another. I mean, there's lots of styles of yoga, but hopefully I've given you a bit of enough of a map here. You can think of, the earthy Iyengar, the fiery rocket, the hot, the watery Scaravelli, the airy Acro a little bit, or the creative side. If you use that map, so like kind of what kind of yoga you're doing, essentially the question is, what are you practicing, right? So what are you practicing on the mat, which you will then do off the mat, unconsciously, if not consciously. So yeah, worth reflecting on what style of yoga you're doing and how it in some way is getting off the mat already. And it's not neutral that you're practicing something, even if it's just for a couple of hours a week. You know, and that concentrated practice, that can start to influence the rest of your life. So yeah, there you go. So I hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, you can subscribe to the channel, hit the bell. More importantly, however, get the newsletter. So the newsletter you do, is that right? In the box here? Okay. So why you would want the newsletter, so you hear about the best videos, so you actually ask me questions, you can reply to the newsletter, I'll reply. You can hear about events, teacher trainings, other things that are happening, and stay in touch more reliably. So newsletter there.